Hi there, and welcome to another one of my classic reviews where I pick one of my all-time favourite movies, give it a rewatch and then come review it. And in this video I'm talking about The Sacrifice, which comes from the 1980s and is directed by my all-time favourite director, Andrei Tarkovsky. So The Sacrifice is Tarkovsky's final film and it sits sort of middle quality among his 7 films, I'd say, but that is in no way a disservice. In fact, mid-tier Tarkovsky is better than the highest highs of almost any other director. So this is still a masterpiece, if one of his lesser films. So this is a film that he made when he wasn't in the Soviet Union anymore and he was in Sweden, and he made a Bergman-esque style movie in many ways. It's very much a chamber piece, it's set on a Swedish island, it's very much a small movie in a lot of ways, and it's not quite the sci-fi or overly experimental stuff that you get in some of Tarkovsky's better known movies like Stalker and Solaris and Mirror or Andrei Rublev. This is a much more simpler film, and in a way it's much more deep cut in its allegory, because it's less obvious quite where the allegory is and quite what the film is saying. And I think part of that is because it isn't as obviously experimental or as obviously metaphorical in its sci-fi nature. It's very much a film that is just a drama, but playing on multiple levels that require a lot of thought. So Tarkovsky was a very religious director, and I think what's really interesting in The Sacrifice is that this is a film about how people see the world. It's about how people find truth, and it's about finding truth through any lens you can. It's about people who find truth through a Christian worldview or a pagan worldview or some other worldview, and about reconciling that. In fact, Tarkovsky is almost certainly the greatest director of faith, because he's one of the only directors who was able to reconcile both God and humanity in his films, and I think he was able to reconcile them by showing us what both of them add to this world. So I'm not religious, I'm an atheist. Not only am I an atheist, I have particularly strong views on religion. I think organised religion is a net negative on the world, although I have nothing against people being spiritual, but I myself am not spiritual. Yet Tarkovsky's movies provide something that I can't get from other spiritual movies, which is that they show me the way people can use religion to help their lives and to see the world, and it gives me a viewpoint that I can't always find. And I think that he does it in a very unique way that isn't preachy, and he's very, very much just showing us people and showing us a world. And I think what's also important that is that Tarkovsky never loses touch with nature. In fact, a key part of The Sacrifice in a way is the way that nature has become detached from man. Man has abandoned nature, man has gone in favour of technology and warfare, and man has left behind nature. You know, there's little things here and there, so the lead character plants a tree at the start of the film, but it doesn't really do much. In fact, the world in a way needs God to renew it, it needs to end so God can rebirth it, because we've lost our way. And a key part of the film, I think, is trying to work out quite where humanity has gone. Where is it going to go, and what can we do to save it? In fact, a lot of the film is to do with sacrifices, you know, quite obviously based on the title, but we see the way that mankind itself has sacrificed our own existence to basically pursue technology. We see how technology brings war. We see how characters have made trivial sacrifices in their lives. They've sacrificed their identity to become an actor. They've sacrificed money to provide extravagant gifts. They've sacrificed a lot of little things here and there. And they've also sacrificed friendships, they've sacrificed family, they've sacrificed careers in order to raise a family, and they've sacrificed a lot of things in their lives to get to where they are, and they find that it's worthless at the end of the day, because when the world is going to end, there's nothing to save them. If all they have is material goods, materialism does not provide an adequate substitute for what it is that we're all deep down seeking to have to fulfill us. What fulfills our life cannot just be a house, it cannot just be trivial things. It needs to be something that fulfills us on a really deeply spiritual level. Even people who are not spiritual need something to fulfill that gap, and that could be rationality or something else, but you need it. And throughout The Sacrifice we see the lead character beg God to save the world, and in return for God saving the world he will make a massive sacrifice. And that whole allegory sideshow is an interesting way to look at the world. In fact, it's a bleak nightmare in many ways, is The Sacrifice. It's a film which, although Tarkovsky is not someone known for his bleakness, in fact I think in general he has this very strange melancholy where he makes films that are happy and positive, but they just don't feel that way, and it's weird. So watching The Sacrifice, which is one of his most bleak works, in fact it might be his bleakest, it ends in a way which doesn't necessarily bring happiness to the characters we're seeing, even if overall there's a sense that it might be a happy ending. It's a weird one, and so the film has these characters who are trying to fulfill themselves, and they go through sacrifices. You know, there's also this whole aspect of the film which is to do with paganism. So there's a pagan character, or a witch, and there's an interesting thing here about how the witch seems to be the one character who hasn't lost touch with nature and hasn't lost touch with the world, and about how the witch seems almost the purest character of everybody, and yet that's something that obviously doesn't match Tarkovsky's Christian worldview or the worldview of the other characters. And I think it's interesting to see that as an aspect of the film as well. The sacrifice is just this long, sort of nightmarish dream. It's filled with long takes, and it's filled with this really gliding cinematography, and it's filled with very pure imagery. It's filled with fire, and it's filled with trees and grass, and it's filled with empty rooms with very few items. There's so many shots where people are stood at the very edge of the screen and there's nothing else going on. It's very much a film with very little happening, and it's a film where everything is so controlled and naturalistic, and yet it feels so flowing and ever living and ever breathing, and it feels like everything is just going on in a cycle. The sacrifice also has this weird way that it has dreams where the colours wash away. It has moments where reality sort of bends in on itself. There is no real reality to the sacrifice. It is a pure allegory, which is something that Tarkovsky's movies are almost always have been. All of his 70s and 80s work are essentially allegories to one extent or another. And I think it's really interesting that Tarkovsky doesn't even try to make his films tell a story that is necessarily coherent or cogent. He wants to just get you a story that makes you feel and think, but not think in a way that's intellectual, not think in a way that's philosophical, just think about where you are in the world and how you fit in and how your own life has got you to where you are. Films like Mirror by Tarkovsky talk about how we're all moment and how we're all just a series of nothing in a bigger thing, and how there's not much to us beyond that, but that doesn't matter. But in a film like The Sacrifice is about those choices in a different way. It's about the specific choices, because a key thing here is everyone makes sacrifices. Everyone in life has to make sacrifices to do one thing. You cannot do everything. It's impossible. You have to rule out things and say, I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to get rid of that. And those things are what determines, because we all make sacrifices, and what determines who you are is what you prioritise to sacrifice. And what you prioritise comes from your worldview, your truth. Whether your truth is through a Christian truth, a pagan truth, a rational truth, a spiritual truth, you have to have a truth that you think the world lives by, that you want to live by, that is your belief system. And so what we have to reconcile is that everyone has that, and you can never understand anyone else's beliefs or truth. You can never truly know that. And so to save the world is to preserve your beliefs and to let everyone else still keep theirs. And to do that requires the most difficult sacrifice of all, in a way. And it's about the way that people have to do this to save the world. Everyone has things which they can't explain, but they know to be true to them. And that's kind of what belief is. Belief is something that you can't explain. I have political opinions that people obviously disagree with. I can justify it because I think of rational reasons why I think they are the right opinions, but that doesn't mean that someone else will see that, or that someone else will agree with that. Because belief and rationality and things like this are not something that is the same for everybody, and it's very subjective. And Tarkovsky's movies are the ultimate in subjective, religious, spiritual allegory that just show us a world where there's so many ways to look at it without it being preachy, without it having necessarily a message. It's just about nature, and The Sacrifice is the ultimate just the natural world, mankind's position within it, and how we all have interacted in that. It's about going through the night hoping that we wake up tomorrow, and hoping that when we do wake up tomorrow, everything will be okay, everything will be like it was. But you can never know that, you can never trust that, and you can never truly believe that. And so it's all a matter of perspective. So The Sacrifice is one of those films that is just that kind of thing. It's just about its little allegory. It's told slowly, it's told sparsely, it's not flashy, it's not showy, there's some fantastic long takes, but it's a simple film really with just one central allegory that says a lot about how everybody in the world really lives. So it's a fascinating film, it's one of my favourites, it's one of Tarkovsky's many masterpieces, and it's a film that I thoroughly recommend to anybody who wants something interesting, something spiritual, something meaningful, or just great cinema in general, because this is top tier art house cinema at its finest. So yeah, The Sacrifice is just a classic, and I love it, and I think it's fantastic, and I think it is a fitting final film for Andrei Tarkovsky, who sadly died shortly after making the film. So it's obviously a classic. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've seen The Sacrifice, because I think a lot of people have a lot of reactions to this. It's certainly a film which draws out people's own views on the world, so please leave me a comment. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to hear more of my reviews, then please subscribe. If you want to read more reviews, you can follow me on Letterboxd or on Twitter, links in the description, and thank you for watching.